Name is Yashmylle. Now I'll discuss to you the module 2, the module of April 2022. Lesson 2. The history, philosophy, and objectives of imprisonment and the development of prisoners, the Sing Sing prison, newborn system, Pennsylvania system, 5 deployment of prisoners, forms of punishment, age of enlightenment, personalities behind the correctional institution, Cesare Marquis of Beccaria Bonesaya, Cesare Lombroso, William the Conqueror, Enrico Ferri, and Clifford Shaw. The history, philosophy, and objectives of imprisonment, the development of prisons. As a result of these developments, numerous fortifications such as Fort Santiago in Manila, Fort Pilar in Zamboanga City, and almost every significant coastal towns along the width and breadth of the Philippine archipelago, which built by the Spaniards as a defense against marauding pirates and bandit groups who refused to recognize the colonial authority of Spain. So, the Fort Santiago, Manila, built by the Spaniards due to the defense fortress. It's a part of the structures of the so the Fort Santiago is a defense for the bandit groups and for the marauding. It is the defense of the against the invaders, so it is built for the protection against the bandit groups. So same here in the Fort Pilar in the Zamboanga City. It is the military defense or fortress built by the Spanish of the colonial government. So it is also the defense against the invaders or the bandit groups who refuse to recognize the colonial authority of the Spaniards. At the onset of 18th century, the prison labor in Marseilles, France was organized into the state factory and was then rented out of the group of merchants, and a memorandum of agreement is signed by the contracting merchant and the state of utilization of able-bodied prisoners. This development sowed the seeds of the practice of providing health services in the prisons to treat medical problems of prisoners. So-called what is the merchant? So merchant, or it is the group of people or a company in a wholesale trade in supplying mga merchandise. So it is to a particular trade. So we are trading mga health services para sa mga prisoners for the medical problems sa mga inmates para ma-cure ang ilahang problem in terms sa ilahang health. It is seemingly clear that medical services in prisons, which is standard practice nowadays and even was incorporated in United Nations Convention for those treatment of prisoners, was borne out the need to maintain the health of prisoners. So it is clear that the medical service is kanang needed siya nowadays, since most of the prisoners or the prisoners kanang did na mawala nga dili magkasakit. So na mga medical services and mga so that ma-maintain ang mga ilahang health nga malayo sila sa mga sakit. That the first recorded prison in the colonies was established in Amsterdam in the state of New York sometime it is the middle of 1660s. Through the incarceration was also resorted to used was those undergoing trial and those who refused to pay debts. The main state prison contained cells in the pit similar to the underground cistern of long ago Rome that are used to detain offenders undergoing trial in some cases, and they hold sentence offenders where they starve to death. So the cistern, so it, mm, it is mentioned here that underground cistern of long time ago Roman that used to detain offenders. So what is cistern? So cistern is a tank of water. It is generally water from the rain. It holds water under the ground and later used for the toilets. So some offenders are in the underground, and then for the undergoing trial in some cases, and they hold sentence offenders will, and they will be starved to death. So the state prison at Thomaston was opened officially in July 1824 to serve a penitentiary where convicts were sentenced to hard labor for life or for any terms of not time not less than 1 year. So penitentiary is the house of the people who convicted serious crimes, and it is the place where they suffer their sins. So the state of Connecticut, because copper mines at Simsbury from 1773 to 1827 as prison facilities. The prisoners worked in mines during the day and their ankles necks shackled during nighttime to prevent escape. So during the daytime, the prisoners worked in the mines, and ilahang mga ankles, ilahang necks, yes, their ankles and necks during the night time, ginahigtan ko na siya ginakandado so that to prevent escape, dili sila mag-escape po sa ilang cell. So this is the Sing Sing prison. Sing Sing in full Sing Sing Correctional Facility, maximum security prison located on Ossining, New York, in use since 1826. It is one of the oldest penal institution in the United States, and also among the most well known in the country, especially notable for its harsh conditions in 19th and 20th century. So now I will mention to you, or I will discuss to you, what is the harsh condition inside the Sing Sing Correctional Facility. So Sing Sing Prison on Hudson River at Ossining, New York. So it is the constructed the village of Sing Sing on the east bank of Hudson River, some 30 miles north of New York City. It was designed to provide additional prison space to replace Newgate Prison. Elam Lins. He officially became head of the new prison, which is opened in 1826. True, it was not completed until 1828. The initial facility had 800 cells. So 800 cells na ha. 800 kabuok silda. The prison population rose in the mid-19th century, resulting in more construction. The 4-story complex was soon 6 stories, and prison eventually housed more 1,600 inmates, because most of the early convicted criminals traveled by boat Sing Sing and phrased up the river came to mean going to prison. One of the notable visitors of prison was Alexis de Tocqueville, author of Democracy in America. The French government sent him Gustave de Beaumont on the United States in 1831 to gather information about the American penal system, the which of prisoners worked the administrative power of warden wielded at Sing Sing. So this is the harsh condition inside the Sing Sing penitentiary system. So muna lang kuan. So electric chair of Sing Sing prison. Sing Sing prison became famous, or rather infamous, the world. The shower bath was a gadget so constructed as to drop the volume of water to headlock naked offender. So ang shower bath is a gadget ni siya gi-construct nga naay usa ka bucket or usa ka bulutangan nga naabugnaw kayo ang tubig nga nasa taas sa ulo sa usa ka offender or usa ka prisoner. So if i-drop na siya nimo, and then unsay may tabo sa mga pinireso. So mo nay rason na if the icy cold water hitting the head of the offender caused too much pain and extreme shock. So balik ko na siyang bugnawa kay IC man na kayo, and then magtrabaho dyan na sila mabuntag. So if magkabihin na sila as bakit, then dagan kayo ang mga matay o magkasakit. So mo ni siya ang picture. Usa ka lalaki nga gibubuan og bugnaw kayo nga tubig. Sing shower of the prisoner to bath after working the fields for 8 hours daily. Na after nag-work for 8 hours, so hago kay ka, singot kay ka, ang imong lawas tibok lawas, grabe. So kape ining grabe na guni siya kaayo kay harsh na kay laha ditong system sa pagkuan sa mga prisoners. The shower bath was The Roman Catholic Church also introduced an innovative prison system for punishing offenders. This is the prison that is divided into cells, and it was first established in year 1704. The Hospital of Saint Michael during the reign of Pope Clement VII. Saint Michael Prison was the prototype of the reformatories of juvenile offenders, which are to be introduced centuries later. Saint Michael Prisons is proof that retribution and repression is an object of will to control of criminality. So he says that, or he proved that Saint Michael Prisons is they are failed to control the criminality of the retribution and repression. So dili jud siya feel good kayo ning concept. So Saint Michael emphasized the rehabilitative concept and pioneered the segregation of prisoners and forced silence to make the prisoners contemplate their wrongdoings. So Saint Michael nag-emphasize siya sa rehabilitative concept na i-contemplate ang mga wrongdoings sa usa ka offender, like they are giving corrections, they're giving kanang any services or any tawag aning laing pamaagi para ang tao tagag chance nga magbago, or ang prisoners ganag chance nga mabago. Through physical torture was severely minimized and reserved only for incorrigibles, was supplanted by mental and psychological threats to extreme loneliness and segregation and forced silence. The convicts are chained in one foot and observe strict rules of silence. So on torture, i-minimize na siya. And then ang mga convicts are gibatan ng ilahang liog sa una, ilahang neck and their ilahang foot and their necks para to prevent escape. They listened to religious brothers giving religious teachings. Many of the practices pioneered in Saint Michael was later adopted in United States in what is known as Auburn system of imprisonment. Auburn State Prison located in Auburn, New York, opened in 1816. It established the disciplinary of administrative system based on silence, corporal punishment, and congregate group labor and architecture in routine. Auburn became the model of prisons throughout the United States. The emphasis was on individual cell block architecture to create an environment to rehabilitate and reform, to separate the criminal from all contact with corruption. So they kanang ilahang separate ang mga tao sa mga corrupt na people, ila silang gilahi og cells. So inmates work as contract convicts, labor 10 hours per day, 6 days per week. Alexis de Tocqueville visited Sing Sing in 1831 and wrote about this system of discipline. Also they are giving discipline sa mga so Alexis de Tocqueville ni-visit siya sa Sing Sing and they're giving discipline pod sa mga inmates dito o mga corrupt na mga gadumala dito. The Auburn model influenced the emergence of reform schools and workhouses in the 1920s, such as New York House of Refuge in 1925, that separated juveniles from the adult prisoners, and workhouse in Blackwell's Island for vagrants and drunks and misdemeanants. New York City built the Tombs of Center Street in 1838 to add prison capacity to Old Bridewell Jail in the 1814 Bellevue Penitentiary and the 1828 Blackwell's Island Penitentiary. Blackwell's closed by reform Mayor LaGuardia, and all inmates moved to New Rikers Island in 1934. New York City built in the Tombs of Center Street in 1831 to add prison capacity to Old Bridewell Jail and the 1814 Bellevue Penitentiary in the 1828 Blackwell's Island Penitentiary. Auburn originally used in congregate cells, but in 1821, Warden William Brittain borrowed the concept of solitary cells from so-called Pennsylvania system. Brittain designed a unique five-tiered cell. So he made a unique cell, which is unique five-tiered cell block of two rows of single cells placed back to back in the center of building. Cells measured only 3.5 feet, 7.5 feet, 7 feet high. Doors face out, waters lined with grated windows that provided indirect light and air. Auburn originally used congregate cells, but in 1821, Warden William Brittain borrowed the concept of solitary, unique, five-tiered cell block row single cells. The most hardened criminals were placed in solitary confinement. So, what is most hardened criminals? So, ito ni sila mga gahig ulo nga mga criminal, kanang like na sila mga mental illnesses, na sila psychological problems, and then they are studying or ilang gi-experimentuhan ang usa ka cell sa the solitary confinement if na mga instances nga makomit nila ang suicide and napoy mo attempt to escape. Subsequently, all male inmates work in congregate shops by day, returning to individual cells at night. So, in all males inmates work in the congregate shops in the day. So individually, they are going to return their cells in the night. So each cell composed of one prisoner. So females first committed to Auburn in 1825 were relegated to an attic and excluded from regular work and exercise. Eventually, overcrowding made in silent system unenforceable, and Auburn's system of discipline deteriorated into corrupt and lax routines of harsh punishment. After the Civil War, the spirit of reform withered, and contract labor was no longer profitable. Despite the demise of the ideal system, Auburn remained the model of nearly a century, primarily because it had been an inexpensive construct and maintain. Unlike Auburn Sing Sing, Pennsylvania Eastern Penitentiary was intended to keep convicts separate as they worked in order to prevent earthly contamination or destruction that might impede their repentance, hence term penitentiary. Solitary confinement as a method of punishment was abandoned in the United States because mad prisoners cannot be productive and unprofitable to maintain. The Auburn prison system was modified to allow the prisoners work during the daytime in common areas but still maintain absolute silence and then spend their nights in solitary confinement. This modification was more response to the vested call, the exact benefits and profitably from the inmate rather than the urge to exercise more humanity on the part of state. This modification was adopted because it was found that people working collectively in common areas but more benefits than people working individually. So if more people work, then the project or the output for it is daghan jud. So mas daghang so dako ang benefit aning dako kayong benepisyo ani kind na or way nila or ilang pamaagi rather than they work individually. So now let's move on to the Pennsylvania system. Prisoners were kept in solitary confinement in cells in 16 feet high, nearly 12 feet long, and 7.5 feet wide. An exercise yard completely enclosed to prevent contact among prisoners was attached to each cell. Prisoners saw no one except institution officers and occasional visitor. Solitary penitence, however, was soon modified to include the performance of work such as showmaking or weaving. The Pennsylvania system spread until it predominated in European prisons. Critics in the United States argued that it was too costly and had deleterious effects on minds of the prisoners. The Pennsylvania system was super. Indeed, the United States Bayou-Burn system. Now let's move on to the different types of the criminal punishment. So first is the incapacitation. Incapacitation seeks to prevent future crime by physically moving criminals away from society. So what is incapacitation? So they are ilang gi-prevent ang usa ka tao or usa ka group of people nga mo stay away sa mga tao or stay away sa mga society or community nga kanang nay mga criminal act nga ginabuhat. So ilang gi-prevent ani, so they are giving this prevention for the future crime na mahitabo, so mas na sila'y pangandam ba. Incapacitation theory examples. The most extreme form of incapacitating punishment is the death penalty, but there are several other forms including imprisonment, curfews, house arrest, electronic monitoring, and disqualifications from driving from drunken drivers. So basically, ang incapacitation is preventive measures ni siya para sa atuang society, para sa kanang if na future crime mahitabo, ma-minimize ang future crimes kay naman tay prevention. So mo ni siya ang mga forms including imprisonment, curfews. So if magpa-implement ta og curfews sa atuang community, then there's a tendency na mingaw ang dalan ana kay peaceful. So ma-minimize jud ang crime kay wala may tao magsoroy-soroy naman galing, but the legal age lang gyud. So the disqualification from driving for drunken drivers. So dili i-allow ang mga nakainom nga mo drive during daytime ba na or nighttime para ma-avoid ang accident. So the second is the deterrence. The goal of the deterrence is to persuade citizens and possible offenders to reoffenders to comfort the rules of law. So the deterrence is the main purpose is to pursue the mga citizens sa atoang community, mga people na we must kanang dapat makabalota if unsay mga batas ug unsa jud ang batas. So I will cite an example for this. So If there an increase in the number of state troopers patrolling highways on the holiday weekend, some drivers may reduce their speed in order to avoid receiving a ticket. So, yes. So, if someone nga na ay mang patrol ng mga patrol cars sa highways, naglantaw na sila kanay sa palibot sa highway, if naamanggali driver nga mag top speed, then against na siya sa law. If naikusog magpadlagan, against na siya sa law. Munang tikitan sila, lanton ang uban nganong overspeeding, tikita na sila kay against man na sa law. So if magpadlagan jud ka, dapat hinahinirad kay para pod siya ma-prevent ang future crime, maka-prevent ka ba that. So what is meant by deterrence as a result of punishment? Deterrence in relation to criminal offending, the idea of theory that is threat of punishment will deter people committing crime and reduce the probability and level of offending in society. So as a result of this punishment, like katong ganiya nga example is this kaning patrolling highways on holiday weekend, some drivers may reduce their speed in order to avoid receiving ticket. So if this will be the result of punishment, kung kusog silang magpadlagan, then dako kay tendency na matikitan sila. So wala nila ilatang hunahon o unsay outcome ana if magpakusog sila, unsay mahitabo nila that. And then slide. The effectiveness of deterrence of the criminal punishment is difficult to assess because people may follow the law for other reasons that may be challenging to track, such as religious or moral beliefs, physical incapacitation, or lack of opportunity. So yeah, many people bisan ug unsaon nimo ug apply ang deterrence, lisod kayo to assess the people kay may uban dili mo follow sa law, bisag kabalo na sila ila gihapon buhaton. And then napod sila belief, moral belief ana. So yeah, so retribution. The third is the retribution. As one of the oldest form of punishment, retribution has roots in the Judeo-Christian tradition of justice. In her book Criminal Law, that retribution prevents crime by giving victims or society a certain sense of satisfaction that is the defendant that has been punished appropriate, reinforcing the belief that criminal justice is working effectively. So retribution. So it is the response to criminal behavior that focuses on the punishment of lawbreakers and the comprehension of victims. In general, the severity of the punishment of proportionate to seriousness of the crime. Rehabilitation, a common prison of policy in America up until the 1970s. Rehabilitation focuses on helping criminals and prisoners overcome the barriers that led them to commit criminal acts. So, the rehabilitation na focus siya nga mo-help sa mga criminals, which is to overcome the criminal act. Like they are giving programs na sila yung mga programa like ilang tabangan ng usa ka tawo nga nag-suffer sa mga mental illness or unsay na sila grabe nga pakiramdam, like nawala sila silang kaugalingon or basig na sila reason nga ni commit sila og any criminal act og para sab sila mabag-o o avoid nila ang pag-commit usab og crime. Ano na siya, ilang tabangan ang mga tao or ang mga prisoners na magbag-o. That's why tagaan sila programs or mga ini exercise na makapa-bag-o nila. This includes developing occupational skills as well as resolving psychological issues such as drug addiction and aggression. So that's why muna siya kalamitan na may tabo, which is na daghang mo commit og crime, kaning drug addiction. So if addict na ka sa crime o addict na ka sa drug, and then dako kay posibilidad nga mga commit jud kag crime. Okay, if wala na kay kapalit og drug, wala na kay money, then mangawat na ka, then imong huna-huna lain na tungod daghang mabuang sa drugs. So it explains the American Psychological Association APA considered the opposite of retribution, and the ultimate purpose of rehabilitation is to transition offenders back to into society. So klaro kaayo na ang purpose sa rehabilitation is nang to transfer ang usa ka offender nga nagbuhat og criminal act back to the society, because ang usa ka criminal na person is kanang i-stay jud na siya away sa society para dili siya makabuhat og crime. So dako kay impact ang usa ka dako kay impact if usa ka person mo buhat og criminal act, kay dili na siya kanang duol sa society, kay ibutang man siya sa usa ka cell, ipaprisuhon like that. So if a person nga ma-rehabilitate na, and then nagsuffer na siya sa iyang sin, nauna niya if unsa iyang sakit unsa iyahang nabuhat nga dili maayo, and then ibalik ang usa ka offender sa society. What was its purpose? The purpose of punishment is to apply treatment and training. So what is the purpose nganong usa ka tawo dakpon? So usa na is to suffer his sins para bayaran niya iyahang sala sulod sa prisuhan. So sulod sa prisuhan, ila na ditong they're giving treatments, programs of trainings sa usa or sa ang mga offenders, so that they can back to the society. Free na sila, but then lilimit ra gyapon nila since ang ilahang freedom since nadya buntaylo nga gisunod. So restoration, a radically different approach to criminal punishment. The goal of restoration is for the offender to make direct amends to both the victim and the community in which crime was committed. During the process of restoration, victims initiate a process in which both they and offenders meet, share feelings and concerns. The dialogue offers victims the opportunity to hear the offender, to make amends and receive forgiveness. So, the restoration is that usa ka victim and usa ka offender, there kanang nagstorya na sila, they're talking, so that basig na ay reason ng usa ka offender nga nabuhat niya to serious crime sa usa ka victim o usa ka crime sa victim, kay basig na siya mental illness. That's why if basin day madala pa, they're giving or receive forgiveness from the victim and to the offender. So restorative justice is often used in crimes involving youth offenders. So yes, many daghang mga kabataan that many youth offenders or offense to do criminal act. So if the youth does the criminal act, then there's a big chance na mapasaylo jud nila ang mga bata since wala pa man sila sa minor age, ilang panghuna-huna bata pa, so makaloy biya sa. So yeah, personalities behind the correctional institutions. So who is Cesare Beccaria? So Cesare Beccaria, born in March 15, 1738 and in Milan, Italy, and he was died on November 28, 1794 in Milan also. So Cesare Beccaria, in full, Cesare Bonacea. He is the Italian criminologist and economist whose Dietali e del Penny Ferrer, Crimes and Punishment, was a celebrated volume of reform of criminal justice. So, Cesare is the Italian criminologist and economist. From early age, he displayed the essential traits and of his character, a highly volatile temperament resulted in periods of enthusiasm followed by depression and inactivity. He was reserved and somewhat taciturn in the social contacts but placed great volume in his personal and family relationships. At the age of 8, he was sent in Jesuit system in Parma. Beccaria later described the education he received there as fanatical and stifling the development of human feelings. Although he revealed the mathematical aptitude, little in his student days gave indication of the remarkable intellectual achievements that were soon to follow. In 1760s, Beccaria proposed marriage in 16-year-old Teresa Blasco. So, nag-propose sa kababayan na si Teresa Blasco. The following year of the marriage took place without parental consent. So, grabe kayo. And they are propose to a young girl and then without parental guidance since it is minor age lang. So, and the young couple began their life together in poverty. So, that's the reason why if sayo magminyo, then magsuffer jud na og poverty since bata pa man, wala pay trabahong nahibaluan. Marquis of Beccaria Bonesea. Beccaria Cesare Bonesana, Marquis of Italian economist and proponent of judicial reform. Cesare Beccaria was author of most infamous Italian work of the Enlightenment on crimes and punishments. So he was born into the noble family of the state of Milan, which was part of Australian Habsburg Empire and was schooled in Jesuits in Parma. After receiving a law degree of University of Parma, he returned to life in Milan. 20s were the most important decade in the intellectual and emotional life. He was permanently inclined to lethargy and anxiety, but when young could be also galvanized by inspiration and express his feelings in language of Rosario. His friendships with Pietro and other ardent young Milanese reforms did not, however, outlast and settle into a reign of routine private life which nevertheless allowed him to hold the melancholy at bay. He mastered the literature of the nascent science of economics, and their teachings was impregnated to the Enlightenment ideal buildings, new science of humanity, understandings, the evolution of human society, improving the lives of entire population. So, he mastered the literature of nascent science in economics, and he studied also the understanding about the evolution of the human society and how to improve the lives of the entire populations. Through the succession of such an appointments of the rose to become the senior member of the administration of the state with responsible various types of agriculture, industry, trade, civil and criminal justice, statistics, and public order. So, armed crimes and punishments combines elements from social contract theory with utilitarian positions. It touches on many aspects of law and justice in a rapid, impassioned style, completely abjuring legal technicalities. Excuse me. Criminal law ought to state clearly what is forbidden and what is the penalties are ought to be applied uniformly to all with no room for discretionary interpretation by juries or magistrates of gracious pardon from the sovereign. So, let's move on to the second character, which is Cesare Lombroso. He described as the father of modern criminology. So Cesare Lombroso is the father of the modern criminology. Cesare is Lombroso's theory, the born of criminal dominated thinking about criminal behavior in the 19th and early 20th century. He was born on November 6, 1835, and he was died on October 19, 1909. And he was the founder of Italian School of Positivist Criminology. He was rejected to establish the classical school, which held in the crime and characteristic trait of human nature that rational choices were the foundation of the behavior. So Lombroso, using the scientific approach and concept drawn by physiognomy, early eugenics, psychiatry, and social Darwinism, argued the criminality was inherited and the born criminal could be inbred as physical defects which confirmed as criminal savage or atavistic. So Lombroso identified that if a person commits crime or born criminal, like it is inherited from the parents, then dali ra jud siya ma-confirm. And if it is confirmed na usa sila ka kanang grabe na mo commit of crime, nana sila ma-identify ni sila as physical defects. It is confirmed as the savage or atavistic. So now let's move on to William Conqueror. So William Conqueror, or William the Bastard of William of Normandy, he was born in 1028, Falaise, Normandy, France, and he was died on September 9, 1087, Duke of Normandy from 1035, and the King England from 1066. So who is William Conqueror? One of the greatest soldiers and rulers in the Middle Ages. So si William Conqueror ay kay usa siya ka soldier before and usa ka siya ka tingbabatas sa Middle Ages. He made himself the mightiest noble in France, and then he changed the course of England's history by his conquest of that country. William the Conqueror, and sometimes William the Bastard, was the first Norman king of England. So, si William Conqueror po kay usa ka king sa England. So, he was starting in 1066 and until namatay siya ra gihapon ang king. So he was died in 1087. So what is the system of government under the William the Conqueror? Norman government under William was similar to government that existed under earlier dukes. It was fairly simple administrative system built around the ducal household, which consisted of group of offenders including stewards, butlers, and marshals. Next is Enrico Ferri. Enrico Ferri was born in Lombardy in 1856 and worked first as lecturer and later the professional of criminal law, having spent time as student of Cesare Lombroso. So Enrico Ferri and his student is Cesare Lombroso. So the teacher of Cesare Lombroso is Enrico Ferri. So Lombroso researched anthropological criminology. Ferri focused more on social and economic influences on the criminal and crime rates. So nag-research si Lombroso about the anthropological criminology and nag-focus siya sa social and economic on the criminal and crime rates. Anthropological criminology. So, what is anthropological criminology? Sometimes it is referred to as criminal anthropology. So, literally, it is a combination of the study of human species and the study of criminals. It is the field of offender profiling based on perceived links between nature of a crime and the personality of physical appearance of the offender. Ferry. Ferry focused more on social economic influence on the criminal and crime rates. As I said earlier, he became a founder of positivist school and he researched on psychological and social positivism as opposed to the biological positivism of Lombroso. Ferry, at the time a radical, was elected to Italian parliament in 1886. In 1893, he joined the Italian Socialist Party and edited her daily newspaper, The Avanti, in 1990s and 1904. He spoke out the Congress against the roles of socialist ministers and in bourgeois governments. Clifford Shaw. Clifford Shaw was an American sociologist and criminologist. What did Clifford Shaw do for the sociology? So I wrote here what is the role of Clifford Shaw in the sociology. So he was a major figure in Chicago School of Sociology during the 1930s and 1940s and is considered as one of the most influential figures in American criminology. He worked on juvenile delinquency with Henry D. McKay, conducted his late 1920s, played a pivotal role in moving study of such delinquency toward the discipline of sociology and away from psychology and psychiatry. Shaw and McKay work span three general areas. So they work in three general areas, which is rather studies geographic variations in rates of juvenile delinquency. The second is the study of autobiographical works of delinquents. Third is the development of the Chicago Area Project, a delinquency prevention program in the Chicago area. So now, let's move on to the alcohol and substance abuse treatment programs that is mentioned on the slides of the month of April. So, daghan dito nagsunod ang mga programs. So, I included it. So, alcohol and substance abuse treatment programs. Drugs and alcohol abuse treatment programs of other different forms of constructed treatment designed to help people struggling with addiction. They can help people to stop using drugs and alcohols safely and comfortably manage with withdrawal period, gain insight into the addiction through evidence-based therapies, learn the skills they need to recover, prevent relapse, address the acute occurring mental health disorders. The second is the anger management programs. So, we all know that all people nag kwanjo na og anger kanang tanan tawo maglagot, and then there is a program for it. So, for some people, the easiest way to change the way they handle anger is to work with psychologists or other licensed mental health professional in individual or group therapy setting. An anger management therapist will also expert in all manner of effective anger strategies and will be able to help develop personalized set of strategies for changing both thinking and behavior and will work best for you. So, third is the educational programs. What is the educational programs in the Philippines? Having further consultations and studies, the government under Aquino officially adopted this known as K682, which involved the 1 year of kindergarten, 6 years of elementary education, first in junior high and senior high school education, and 2 years of senior high school education. So, in educational program, sukad nga si Aquino nang na presidente, he introduced the K-12 program. So, mo to siya, for me, this program is kanang gamit siya since ang 2 years senior high, which is addition unta kay karon fourth year college na ko graduating. But then mura ko og silbi ganahan nga di may kanang galibog ko kay gamit siya tinuod para na kay background in college, but ang sa bad side niya is dugay kay ka mahuman og eskwela kay naman siya addition og 2 years like that. So mo ni siya educational programs nga igama ni President Aquino. So family development programs. So the family development programs family development programs empower individuals to recognize obstacles and develop goals that can enable them to improve job skills, effectively manage conflicts between family and job demands, strengthen family relationships, and experience personal growth. So, para nako, if these development programs will kanang ma-implement, then our family will be kanang malinawon. So mas strengthen ang relationship sa family, and if kompleto ang imong pamilya, walay gubot, then imong the way how you think is like always in positive kay naa ang imong inspiration sa kinabuhi, naara sila always, and makamanage ra ka sa imong self and sa imong society if sa imong buhaton kay wala man kay problema sa imong family. So thanks to these programs. Library and law library services. Law libraries are the great resource if you are representing yourself, you just want to be better informed about the law. Law libraries have books about child custody, small claims, writing a will, being arrested, and other common legal problems. Law libraries usually have self-help legal books. So recreational programs. Tennis, golf, and various aquatic sports such as diving and windfall is widely practiced. Filipinos have excelled in various internationally competitive martial arts, including boxing, wushu, and taekwondo, with local Filipino martial arts tradition have experienced a resurgence since end of 20th century. So the recreational program is an event happened in the society, like like sports, mga arts, so that they're ganang away sila sa usa ka crime. So mas mayo jud na moapil na lang kag sports or any events kaysa kanang nalulong kas droga para sa your kaning nasulod ka society sa usa ka maayo na ehemplo or maayo na salamin sa kinabuhi. Kay silbi ang sports manggod makatabang kanato para mapalayo ta sa mga criminal act. So the recreational programs for inmates. So naman po yung mga recreational programs ang mga inmates kay bisan tuod og napiniriso sila, they're giving chance na to enjoy life like that. Yeah. So Federal Bureau of Prisons inmates have regular access to prison recreational programs. These prison workouts are usually performed in prison gym. So yeah, kanang napoday ang prison, napoday ay gym ang mga prisoners. So this page explains recreational options in federal prisons, including prison football, arts programs, hobby craft activities, and music programs. Yeah. So kanang I was amazed aning kind of program since nasa lay opportunity to do what they want kanang sa ilang sports nga ganan, and then ma-experience sab nila. So I don't know sa uban nga prison, but gamay kalagmitan ra jud nga nay inani nga program katurang kalagmitan mga prisoners, mga youth offenders nga nasa DSWD. Mura jud ako kay most of the prisoners are detained lang yun. Then igo ra sila pakanon, then matulog na pod sila like that. Mura jud ako ang nabantayan. So the religious services, the act of public worship following prescribed rules. The Sunday services, divine service, relationship ceremony, religious ritual, a ceremony having religious meaning, church service, devotional, prayer meeting, prayer service. So the service ang the religion. So the Sunday mass is also a religious services. So what is this purpose? Yes, para natay presence sa God, natay presensya sa Ginoo. And then para pod ang atuang kasing-kasing gunahuna permina sa Ginoo. And sa relation ani na topic is kanang if Diyos nun ka kabalo ka unsay sayop, unsay maayo, then kabalo ka kung unsay imong gibuhat. So it is good for us na mga people na naaning kind of service para mapalayo ta sa mga tawo nga daotan, and we can create a better world, and we can be a better people in our community or society. So the sex offender treatment program, over 20 years, clinicians at Trauma and Hope have been successfully providing community service to include case consultation services, include case assessment, individual, group, and or family treatment for those youth and adults charged with sexual offenses. So, temporary release program for inmates. So, there are temporary release program for the inmates or for the offenders. So, what is temporary release? So, temporary release can be furlough, which allows an inmate to go home and stay with her friends for up to 7 days to maintain family ties, look for employment, or to seek post-release housing or work release, which allows inmates to leave a facility for up 14 hours a day to work at a job in the community and gain the job training, or by industrial training leave which allows inmate to participate in the industrial training program and design sites by educational release. So the trauma programs. Trauma is defined as any event of experience that overwhelms the mind and the body, which is out of our control. The healing within program will help to understand the effects of trauma on your life, create meaning out of your journey, and acquire educational and tools to overcome it. So, transitional service programs. What is transitional service programs? So, the purpose of it is to promote the autonomous growth from the early age until the individual reaches of majority legal adult. An individual education programs IEP provides a basis for focusing on specific interests, preferences, and skills that facilitate different aspects of life. So, veteran services, providing free professional assistance to veterans and their families in obtaining benefit and service earned through military service, and provided by the Department of Veterans Affairs and other agencies of government. So, volunteer service and programs. Volunteer service is any type of work that is done free of charge. So what is volunteer service? It can be informal, like ranking your elderly neighbor's lawn. Volunteer service, it can be formal, such as volunteering for non-profits, churches, schools, homeless shelters. So if you're a volunteer, then mas mayo. So daghan ang mga volunteer karon in such sa mga sa asa na area. So we can be a volunteer nga mo serbisyo ta sa church. We can be a youth, mo volunteer ta sa schools, or bisag unsa na events na ata nga mo volunteer to help people, or to help to help any kind of events para maayo ilahang services o programs. So how does volunteering help to the community? So there are four I wrote here four aspects on how to help to the community. So it saves money that non-profits would need to spend on their employees. So if volunteer ka, then wala mabayad ang usa ka tawo para nimo kay volunteer raman ka. So voluntarily kuan raman ka kanang mo-assist ra ka sa pangilanglan sa usa ka event or program or usa ka institution that helps meet local needs, require the community to function in its best, supports families and other individuals, the community who cannot support themselves, improves educational system. So thank you guys, that ends of my presentation, and I hope you learn something from me, and see you soon. Thank you mom, thank you viewers, and God bless you all. Stay safe.